I've been gardening a long time, over 7 years on this property alone. And if you count the time with my parents and grandparents, I have over 2 decades of experience. And over this time, I've learned 6 lessons that every single gardener will learn, whether they like it or not. You can learn now and be successful faster, or you can learn through experience when the garden teaches you the hard way. The first lesson is throw it until it sticks. Most new gardeners are like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just gonna buy some seeds and some plants and I'm gonna stick them in the ground and I'm gonna grow a garden. And I love it. But the reality is shortly after we become sad and disappointed, like, why didn't my garden grow? I must suck at gardening and just give up. Moral of the story is this is so common, but don't let it be you. I remember starting my first garden on this property. It was cinder block raised beds, bagged soil, store-bought plants. I thought I was doing everything right, but it failed horribly. I may have successfully grown some lettuce and radishes, but now I know that they can pretty much grow anywhere. And most of that is because companies make you think their products is what will make you successful, when all they really want is you to buy their stuff. So the first mistake that we all usually make is not knowing, and that's exactly that, being ignorant, but it's okay. We either have to accept that we're gonna go find someone that has more experience and we're gonna learn from them, or we have to do the research in order to get ourselves moving in the right direction, or accept that we are just gonna go out there, dive in head first, make a ton of mistakes, and learn from these experiences. All of them are okay, but 1 or 2 of these are gonna get you there much faster and a lot happier. At the end of the day, we all just wanna figure out what is gonna work best. So the very first thing that I want you to do is make a list of the things you want to grow, the plants you love and why. And then we're gonna build upon this list in the next 5 lessons. The second lesson is you are what you eat. And what I'm talking about is your soil. Your plants are only going to be as lively and prolific as the soil. My garden just boomed with life when I started to invest in the soil. But seriously, if you're going to put any time and effort into growing a good garden, please just take the extra step, invest in your soil, and I promise you, it will pay you back in dividends for years. Soil is the foundation for all the plant's growth. It holds carbon, nutrients, transports water, creates a home for beneficial microbes. It is so important. And you know, vegetables aren't native plants. Many, if not all of them, have been bred to provide different attributes, which means they can be divas from time to time. So when you provide them with the right environment, that is when they thrive. If you're going to be growing in the ground, cover your soil with 3 to 4 inches of compost before you plant your plants. And if you're going to be growing in raised beds, I highly recommend creating your own potting mix. Simply mixing some compost, topsoil, peat moss, or coconut coir with some perlite or vermiculite creates the perfect environment for your vegetable garden. So if you want a beautiful, lush, and productive vegetable garden, it all starts with the soil. The third lesson is go big or go home. I've gardened in all types and sizes of garden beds. And as I said, I started out with a cinder block garden that was utilizing 4-foot by 8-foot garden beds, which seems to be the standard in the United States. Then I decided to build my first wooden raised beds and outfit my garden with 3 different types or styles to see what worked best. The 4-foot by 8-foot raised beds were just too hard to manage, especially when the plants started growing. I could barely reach my arm into the center of the raised bed, and there was just so much wasted space. I wound up learning from the farmers, of course the hard way, that my 30-inch or 2.5-foot raised beds, or even my 3-foot raised beds, performed the best. Granted, I still have some of these larger metal raised beds, but I assembled them in a configuration where they're still less than 4 feet wide. But honestly, the 30-inch wide or 2.5-foot wide raised beds have got to be my favorite. They're just so versatile. You can grow any plant in this size raised bed. I can grow a row of tomatoes with some basil and marigolds on either side. I can grow 2 rows of peppers, or I can grow some carrots in one row and some spinach in the other. They're honestly the best. But what I want you to take away from this lesson is use raised beds or create garden beds where you will be able to utilize all of the space. And we're gonna touch on this even more in the next lesson. The 4th lesson is being inefficiently efficient. Just a couple years ago, when I had all the different types of raised beds in my garden, I had 500 square feet of growing space in my 1,000 square foot garden. I had packed in a ton of raised beds, and it was so productive, but it was so hard to manage. What I had completely overlooked was garden pathways and their key in a garden's overall efficiency. Especially when working in raised beds, you need clearer and wider paths to bring in wheelbarrows or wagons for compost, soil, or mulch. And when the pathways are only a couple feet wide, it can make it extremely difficult to do much of anything without tripping over yourself, stepping into other raised beds, or toppling over plants with tools. I have loved having a large 4-foot pathway that goes through the main entrance and to each side of the garden. And then in between each one of my raised beds, we have about 3 feet. But the big takeaway here is that you wanna be able to access your garden beds from at least 3 sides, so that way you can manage each bed properly. So before you install all those new garden beds, whether raised beds or in the ground, take these things into consideration. Because the last thing that you want to be doing is putting in a ton of labor, moving all of your garden beds to make a better layout. Don't be like me. The 5th lesson is the right plant at the wrong time. Your first year of gardening is like, oh, I'm gonna get a bunch of plants and seeds and I'm gonna grow them in the ground and it's gonna be amazing. And then by your 4th or 5th year, you come up with your nerdy little system or Excel spreadsheet to tell you exactly when to plant all the different types of plants in your garden. This might seem crazy, but it's honestly pretty necessary. But seriously, just think about it. There are different types of plants. There are some that like to grow in the heat of the summer, while there's others that like to grow in the cooler parts of the year. The point is, not every single plant grows at the exact same time. So you do have to learn when the different types of plants like to grow so that you can be successful. And figuring this out really isn't so difficult. Take that list that we made in our first lesson and do some simple Googling. Figure out what seasons all of your plants prefer to grow. And then we can just start by making a simple calendar. I decided to just sit down one day and make a master Excel spreadsheet, which has all of my favorite vegetables, herbs, and flowers, and it tells me to the day when I should be planting my plants. And you don't have to be this specific, but in my crazy brain, in my type A brain, this is what I have found that works best for me. But this was a one-time task that now all I have to do at the beginning of the year is reference my calendar and I know exactly when to plant each one of my plants out in the garden. So if you don't want to do all of this research, I've actually created a customizable calendar for anyone in the world. So go check out the link in the description and go ahead and order yourself a custom garden calendar, which will tell you exactly when to plant all of your favorite plants. And the 6th lesson is you're not better off alone. Have you noticed a ton of weeds growing in your garden? Well, I'll tell you what, it's probably because you're not growing enough plants. And you might be like, yes, I can grow more plants. And that's exactly right. The soil wants to be planted in. Just take a look at any bare patch of soil or land. Shoot, even look at these pathways. If you don't plant them with grass or plants, nature is going to take over. So what we want to do is plant the soil as densely as it can handle. And the way that we're going to accomplish this is by companion planting. With this method, you plant a variety of vegetables, herbs, and flowers all in the same garden bed, so no space goes to waste. It minimizes weed pressure, therefore lowering maintenance, and since the soil is mostly covered, you will see it stay moist longer, which means less watering. Companion planting has made my gardens come to life. And what gardener doesn't want a space that's more productive, more beautiful, prevents pests and disease, and requires less maintenance? It's literally every gardener's dream. And I can tell you, it's 100% possible. Almost every lesson I mentioned in this video, I have made a specific video on. So if you want to go into even more detail on a specific topic, make sure you check out the description. But seriously, if you want to grow your green thumb as fast as possible and minimize making all of the same mistakes that I have, take these lessons seriously and learn them now. Because if you don't, I know that you're going to be learning the lessons the hard way at some point in your gardening career. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if there is a lesson that you think I missed, make sure you let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you on the flip side.